accurate for the minutes, so we'll make sure we don't have too many corrections. All right, so I'd like to have a motion that we have a quorum, just so we can conduct business.
Barbara Perry, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Everybody okay with it? Call the question. All those in favor of declaring a quorum, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. All right, and as we usually do, we'll go around and introduce ourselves just so we can get kind of an idea who all is here this evening. Quite a few familiar faces, a couple that I don't know that I've noticed before, and that may be just me. They sometimes refer me to as the Grand Poobah. I'm your chairman, Stan Bean, and I'm pleased to be here with you. Be here for about 3 more months. Okay. So if we could go around the room, and first,
Jeff Hayes, Executive Director. Thank you for coming this evening.
Hi everyone, Tony Junter from the City of Franklin.
I'm Jerry Coogan, Project Manager with Lake Region Planning Commission, and I'll be here for 3 more months.
Ian Marshall, Freedom,
That's quite all right. We're glad to have visitors.
Jean Marshall, Freedom, and I'm a commissioner with the visitor.
Dave Kerr from Warmsted, Commissioner.
Goodwin Gate, Tufton Borough Commissioner.
Paul Snelling, Commissioner Holderness. Pat Jones, Ospey, Commissioner.
Wayne Crowley, Commissioner from Northfield.
And Doug Reed from Northfield.
Jim Giffen, Tamworth Board of Selectmen.
And just before we go on, I just have to interject a little story here. Last month, we were going to have the meeting in Tamworth because Pat Farley had been asked to do that. So Pat couldn't be here, so kind of with the weather and the compressed time and everything, we decided that we'd postpone it to this month so we could have it here and Pat could be here. Well, Pat is not here again this evening either. Had something else that came up, so she tried to get a few folks to come in the place. And welcome. Okay, with that we'll go on. Let's see, I think I'm over there with
Barbara Perry, Commissioner from Molten Borough.
Sam Perry, Multnomah.
John Cotton, Commissioner Andover.
And Harry Dean, Selectman Center Harbor.
Maureen Creation, Commissioner, Center Harbor.
Mitch Manso, Commissioner Hebron.
Judy Cormier, Molten Borough.
Joe Congan, Molten Borough, member of the Broadband Committee.
good.
State favorite, Bristol.
I'm John Dutchin. I'm Tamworth's representative to the TAC.
John Ayer, I guess Commissioner from Guilford.
Good. Got a couple of folks coming in, and just tell us who they are as they sign in.
Herb Vadney, Commissioner from Meredith.
And Bill Byard, same.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of January 27th of 2014. If I could have a motion.
Wayne Crowley, I move we approve the minutes of January 27th.
John Cotton, second.
Right, any discussion on them? Anybody see anything that they, yes?
On the members present, I think Dan Anson O'Connor should be Dean. And then Wilbur is, it says Robert, it probably should be Roger.
Okay, any other folks? All right. So I'll call the question then to approve the minutes with the suggested amendments. No further discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the amendments. The ayes have it. Thank you. And that brings us on to tonight's entertainment.
I didn't go that far.
Oh. All right, Jerry Coogan is going to give us an update on the Lakes Region Plan. Jerry, I'll let you handle it however you would like.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Dean. Can people see this in the back? John, can you see this?
Thank you.
John, can you read this for me?
Yes. I don't read.
Well, this is an update of the Lakes Region Plan. And I'm going to go through the presentation. gave it to the Lakes Region Plan Advisory Committee a couple days ago, and we have a few members here. Gene Marshall is the chair, Steve Wingate's a member, Mark Snelling's a member, Dave Kerr is a member. Anybody else a member of the Lakes Region Plan Advisory Committee? Who else did I forget? No, okay. John Cotton, excuse me, yeah, John Cotton. So they've heard this presentation, and we are going to talk about the regional planning process and regional planning commissions and this Lakes Region Plan. This comes from the statute, RSA 3647. It says that the regional planning commissions are advisory. We have no regulatory power, so you can't tell anybody to do anything. We're purely advisory. We make recommendations, and people, towns can either accept them, reject them, modify them, or do whatever what they want to do. There's no regulatory authority. But the commission is required to prepare a regional plan. And it says that right here. It shall be the duty of the regional planning commission to prepare a comprehensive master plan for the development of the region. So that's a legislative responsibility. The state doesn't fund it, but it allows the communities to band together to form the Lakes Region Planning Commission, and the commission acting together may apply for federal funds. So the history of this planning grant is, we've done a regional plan maybe 10 years ago, but it was a very brief document. It might have been 12 pages, plus or minus, and emergency policy statements. The regional planning commissions, all 9 of them banded together, and they submitted an application to HUD to get a sustainable communities initiative grant. They did that a couple years ago. They weren't funded. They did it maybe 3 years ago, and they got funded. And one of the reasons that the HUD liked this particular application was that the state planning office wasn't doing any state planning. There hasn't been a state development plan done since the year 2000, although the state is required to prepare a state development plan just like the regions are required to prepare regional plans, but the state hasn't done any of that. In the year 2003, the Office of State Planning was basically merged in with the Office of Energy. It was demoted, and basically when there was like 35 staff members in the Office of State Planning, now there's only 4, and the different people went different places. The reason I'm saying that is this was a reason that HUD funded this planning effort, because they thought it was a good idea that the 9 regional planning commissions working together to build a plan from the grassroots level up, working with the communities and working together, they could develop a state plan. So the regional plans that each of the 9 regional planning commissions are working on will be used to put together a state plan. There are many state agencies that are involved in this process. Environmental Services, Health and Human Services, Office of Energy and Planning, etc., etc. The Forest Society. Very many agencies are involved in this planning process. What's been happening in terms of the planning process and what have we been doing in the last year and a half? Well, at the state level, we have what we call technical advisory subcommittees. And these technical advisory subcommittees are basically people broken down into about 4 or 5 groups. There's community and economic vitality, transportation and housing, environmental quality. And basically, we've gotten a lot of information. We've surveyed people and found out what the current policies are, what the current data is, and that's been very valuable to get to this point. Also, about a year and a half ago, we had vision. We had listening boxes. These little boxes put in the communities. We were soliciting cards, comments. We got cards and comments from people as to what they liked the best about the region, what they'd like to see better. All this effort I'm going through is trying to demonstrate that we were getting information at the local level, trying to work from the grassroots level up. We looked at all the vision statements of the 30 communities we have in the Lakes region and found out what they said. We looked at major regional planning documents that have been done in the past years. We met with local officials. The University of New Hampshire Survey Center. How many people have heard of Dr. Andy Smith from the University of New Hampshire? He does a lot of survey work throughout the whole state, lots of different things. His group did a survey to I think it was 2,900 and some citizens in the state of New Hampshire. They did an over-survey for the Lakes region and Central, about 400 people. They asked them a lot of questions about housing, transportation, economic development, broadband. We have some information we can share with you with that. If you get into We also had an open house back on March 7th at our office, actually March 7th of 2013. Then we had a community of place meeting in Laconia on May 7th, 2013, where we had about 120 people. We had the largest of these community place meetings. All the other regional planning commissions throughout the state had these meetings. And there were also community of interest meetings. These were with people that are underrepresented or disadvantaged people. It could be low-income people, disabled, could be veterans, single parents, etc. And then we also looked at, there's smart growth principles that are embodied in the state law. We looked at that, and also New Hampshire livability principles. This is a word association, we call it a word association cloud. We took all the information that people said, what do you like about the area? And the words that came up the most were the words you see the largest. Lakes, they like the lakes, they like the mountains, they like the beauty, they like the rural, they like the natural, they like the small environment. So this is what we kind of found out from this word association. And then we put together one dealing with what would they like to see the area improved upon, what would we like to see better. And public, transportation, jobs, roads, these are some of the things that we saw from that word association effort. As I mentioned, we looked at all the town master plans, the town visions, and I like the town of Andover, New Hampshire. All these towns are unique and pretty. This is an interesting one. They had a population of 2,371 in the year 2010. And in the year 2012, the population declined by about 5 people to 2,366. But a lot of their statements here are typical of what other communities would have. I'm not going to read them all, but they like the small town rural character, they want to have a little bit of commercial development, they want to preserve views, conserve natural resources, and develop community infrastructure. And this is, and if you go through the other towns' master plans and vision statements, it's similar. Some of the examples of some of the Lakes Region plans that we looked at, one's the transportation plan, and one was our comprehensive economic development strategy. It was done in the year 2009. It was updated to the year 2013, just a year ago. I'm going to review some of the major findings of the UNH survey that was done for the Lakes region, and you have a copy of that in your handout. But environmental protection and natural resources was like the number one top priority for investing public dollars. Energy efficiency and energy choices were second. Safe and affordable housing was third. People were interested in local agriculture. Quality schools, the most important asset we have in the community. 93% of the people responded. Maintaining bridges and highways to be the most important priority for transportation. And then people were kind of split on other types of transportation. The survey did tell us that people were willing to pay additional tax. The majority of people were willing to pay additional funds and taxes to pay for improved roads. And we thought that was interesting. A large majority, 93%, thought that the internet service was good. And that's really important if we want to attract economic development here in the Lakes region. We have been working on our broadband plan. The gentleman in the back, I believe, is a member of the broadband committee. These are results regarding what is of its importance to your community. And schools came out top. Nearby job opportunities were second. Farm stands and forestry was third. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free. We want to make this interactive. We don't want to just talk to you, but we'll have some feedback.
I think it might be better to dim the lights on these slides.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. John, I think we really want to.
Turn this one off, Tim.
Does this help? How about the one in the back?
Helps me.
Pardon?
Helps John.
I'm cooking though.
I'll go back. Environmental protection. Protection, the quality of drinking water supplies 97% of the people responded. Protecting air quality, that's primarily a federal and state responsibility, and that was high up there. Preserving farms and agricultural land, 84% thought that was a high priority. Protecting aquatic and marine habitats was 81%. Protecting quality of water for recreation, 81.
What do the yellow and red
Okay.
areas
Green
mean?
is high priority, yellow is medium priority, low is red priority, and kind of off color is don't know. Housing preferences. We talk a lot about workforce housing and whatever, but people responded. They like single-family detached housing the most. They like probably assisted living, and then clusters of single-family housing. Apartments, 38%. So the great majority of people like single-family homes.
Jerry, is this survey just in the Lakes region, or is it also in the entire state?
Well, there were two surveys. One was done for the entire state, but for the lakes and the central, we did an over-survey. So we just targeted the Lakes region and central. And we did about 400 extra people. And we matched it with the other people who were surveyed as part of the statewide. And this is for the lakes and central area. Other Upper Valley and Southwest teamed up to do a joint survey for Western. We're doing a natural hazards and climate change study. We asked people about concerns about weather-related events. 28% thought were very concerned about snow and ice storms. I remember a couple of years ago, I went through an ice storm, and some people in my community didn't have power didn't lose their power at all. Some people like me lost it for 5 days. Some other people lost it for 13 days. I went out and bought a generator, haven't had to use it yet. And that was like 4 years ago. So. Power outages, wind damage, flooding. Only 11% of the people are concerned about it, very concerned. 25 are somewhat concerned. But, you know, if you're hit by a flood, and you do a lot of flooding in certain places, you would be concerned. This is priorities for public investment. Environment came up top. Natural resources, energy efficiency came in second. Safe and affordable housing, economic development.
Can we go back up for a minute? I'd like to know, I was really surprised by some of these survey results. I just wonder, you know, like if the commissioners, you know, if people agree that this is, I mean, this was a scientific survey done by UNH with errors, you know, the error margin and things like that. But these are the results that we got, and I just really, it's not the results that you always might think that you're going to get. And I just want the commissioners to be aware of this result, and if there's any questions about it, then now's a good time to ask, because, go ahead.
We had a similar survey in Tupperville in 2006, and very, very similar results.
So you're not surprised at all?
No, I think it goes with that, you know, look at the priorities for the town. People like the small town character, and they want to keep it. They want to keep their roots, and they want to be able to drink clean water and breathe clean air.
And this is actually saying that we'll pay for it, is what this particular survey question asks. Jared,
About a year ago, in Barnstable, we also had UNH do a survey for our master plan.
Yeah.
And the top priority that we found, by quite a large margin, was the transportation for local roads and bridges.
Yeah. Harry?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have a sample profile for that study?
It was a random sampling, and it was done to 2,900 people by UNH, and they guarantee like accuracy of 2.4% plus or minus.
Do they have a profile on age, income, education, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I do. I have to go look it
I'd
up.
be curious to just get a better sense of what the sample is.
Yeah, I can send you a copy of it.
That'd be great if you would.
Yeah, right. If I could just back up, you know, in this process, we're gathering lots of information. This is one piece of information. The community of interest meeting is another piece of information. Our meeting tonight will be another source. So we're getting information from lots of different people, lots of different sources. They all may not be the same, but we're trying to put it together into this plan. Yes, sir. And your name is?
I'm John Morgenstern
Yeah,
from Guilford.
Yes.
This says priorities for public investment, and
it was stated that that indicates that people are willing to pay for it. People are always willing to pay for something somebody else pays for. But the question is, are they willing to increase their taxes to do these things? Was that brought into the survey at all?
Not directly, but maybe indirectly, I guess. So,
Well, okay. I just, the survey results are very dependent on how the questions are asked and what questions are asked. And that one struck me as sort of an obvious thing.
Yeah, I don't have the questions right here, but I know UNH thoroughly vetted this, and they spent a lot of time.
Public investment.
Right. Yes, sir.
Just trying to understand data, that top line priority represents what, 48% of something?
Yeah.
And that means that 52% of respondents didn't care?
I guess 52% either didn't
Well,
respond.
I'm just looking at the delta between.
It's lower, first and second priority, top and
Yeah,
second
yeah,
priority.
top priority is not the second priority. Like,
Right, and then the difference between, because you've only got 60% listed there, what would be 100% of the survey?
I have to go back and look at it.
So in essence, then it could have been 52% didn't respond at all.
Could be.
Is there a written report on this?
Yeah, if you give me your email, I'll send it to you. I'll send you a complete copy of the report.
Okay, I'll do that afterwards, thank you.
And so the Harriet too. Herb has a question.
Herb Vadney Meredith. On that third one down, which is safe and affordable housing choices, and that's got a pretty high rating as a high priority, I find it very difficult to believe that the bulk of our people would have expected public investment for that particular item. Are they looking for public housing?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was public housing, but maybe it could have been infrastructure, water, sewer.
I'm just reading the words.
Yeah.
It is only 25% of people, first and second, it's the top and second priority, now it's up to 25% of them.
If I could ask the commissioners to read into this a little bit. So on the very top one where it says environmental protection, are we to glean out of that data that we're not doing a good enough job and so we need to invest more? Or status quo, are we doing a good job, if we want to see it spent that way? I'm just trying to get a better feeling for what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah. Well, when you look at this and the other information you got and the surveys and the vision statement, just that environmental protection and natural resource comes out very high. Now, as far as future investment, towns are doing watershed planning and water management planning, stormwater management, as you know, is an issue. And I would take it a step further and say, well, maybe that's investments that people want to make in the community, stormwater management investments. So.
That's a pretty big leap.
Well, just a comment if I could make it, Jerry. Center Harbor, we did a study, and a lot of these outcomes are consistent. I mean, people concerned about environmental and energy efficiency, not so much affordable housing, but there was another question, which was an oddball question. I didn't design the survey, and it basically asked if they liked the way things were going, or if they wanted change. And the overwhelming message we got was, no change, don't mess with it. Don't change the formula for success. So I share your skepticism that some of these conclusions can be read out of that data. I really would like to see the whole study from Mr. Andy, whatever his name is there.
Yeah.
Because often studies are designed in such a way that they generate specific results. Sometimes don't correlate with reality.
I mentioned before, Lakes Region Plan Advisory Committee, chaired by Gene, Steve, and Bob, and Dave, and John. These people look at all our planning documents, meet every other month, providing us input. So their role is to kind of vet these comments and vet the plans that we're drafting. We had this regional community of place meeting. I think some of you were there back in May of 2013. And these are some of the themes and concerns that came out of it. People are concerned with the out-migration of younger people from the area. People are concerned about the decline in school-age population, the graying of New Hampshire and its implications for healthcare, transportation, discussed at this community place meeting. Then we had a community of interest sessions. These were meetings that were basically held with private groups of people who were, as I mentioned, physically disabled, low-income people, people with racial and ethnic minorities, senior citizens, youth, immigrants. And these were meetings that were done somewhat in private. UNH, Cooperative Extension, and New Hampshire listens, and they got information as to what these people are interested in. And I'm not going to go into this in any detail, but this community of interest meeting said that their interests were transportation, housing, jobs, and social services. Now, how is this plan process working? We do have the Plan Advisory Committee, which I mentioned before. We've had workshops in housing, transportation, and environment. I think some of you have probably been to those. We had them in September, November, and January. We also have our website, and we have our own Lakes Region Planning website, where documents will be up there. We also have Granite State Future website, where you can go and you can look at the other 8 regional planning commissions and what they're doing, and also look at Lakes Region Planning. This is a housing development. This is Pinecrest over in Meredith, New Hampshire. This is done by Laconia Community Area Trust, Land Trust. And basically, they came in at the invitation of the town of Meredith to help them with this housing development. The way the plan is going to be laid out is we're going to have a vision. That's in draft form. We're going to tell the Lakes Region story. Try to do some interviews of people that may have a story to tell about a job or transportation or housing. And then we're going to have a section on prioritized implementation strategies and projects. And that's what we want to, after this session's over, after my presentation, my discussion, we'd like to break out into maybe 2 groups or 3 groups and talk about what are some of the priorities that are important in your particular community or your particular area. We've done a survey of the towns, their CIPs, and their master plans, and identified some projects. And we have a handout here we can share with you, but we also want to maybe dig a little bit deeper. And then we're going to have technical plan components, where we're going to have each chapter of the regional plan in this technical plan component section. This is the draft vision statement. Again, it's draft. I'm not going to read it for you, but it's up there. Respect, communication, cooperation, and wise stewardship of the region's abundant natural resources are guiding principles. Economic development. This is one of our chapters that's been completed. The fundamental goal is to create suitable, well-paying jobs. Then we have goals regarding workforce development, new economy, social capital, sustainability. We think sustainability is important. Entrepreneurship, creative economy, and improving the quality of place. Transportation. Lakes Region Planning has been doing a lot of transportation over the years. And we've broken the transportation plan up into safety issues, project development, demand management, safety, advocacy, walking and biking, and planning. Housing. The housing section is going to include a housing needs assessment. What are the housing needs of the area? We're going to have information on economic and diversity characteristics. Some towns, maybe half a dozen, have some economic challenges and some diversity issues. HUD wants us to look at racial and ethnic composition of certain communities. We feel we really don't have a lot of those types of issues, so we're looking more at economic and diversity characteristics. Also, the housing chapter will talk about housing preferences, affordability, workforce housing, fair housing, and equity assessment. We've contacted the New Hampshire Council on our Commission on Discrimination. We've contacted the New Hampshire Legal Aid Assistance Group, also the HUD Fair Housing Office in Boston, and asked, are there any housing violation, housing complaints regarding fair housing in our region? And the answer is that there's been a few complaints, but they've all been resolved, and there appears to be nothing of note from our contact with these organizations. The environment. We're going to have sections of natural resources, water infrastructure, and then sections on issues and concerns and recommendations. This is being worked on now. We feel from the information that we've looked at that there's a connection between the increase in severe weather events and climate change. And then this section deals with natural hazards and climate change. We seem to be getting more severe storms, whether it be flooding or microburst, etc. And UNH, Dr. Cam Wake, has done a lot of study on climate change and assessment. And he feels that we're going to have, this year is an anomaly because of its temperature, but the trend is to have warmer winters and more frequent and heavy rain events when we have them, and just a more intense type of storms, I guess, when we do have them. That's what these people who study climate are telling us. So we're trying to get communities aware of this and prepared so that they can be resilient, that when they do have a flood or a microburst or whatever, they can be resilient and bounce back. We're also doing a study, chapter on energy efficiency and green building, and we want to kind of tout some of the successes that people have done here in the Lakes region. I think Lakes Region College, Lakes Region Community College, is doing an excellent job because they give an associate's degree in energy efficiency. And there's a Dr. Wes Malone down there who teaches energy efficiency, and he has done a very good job at helping develop this curriculum and developing professionals to go out and help individuals and communities become more energy efficient. The town of Effingham put in a wood boiler, pellet boiler, and they got a grant for it. They're cutting their energy efficiency significantly. Carroll County Nursing Homes put in a wood-fired boiler. You're seeing more and more of this, and we just want to document that and just kind of articulate some of the progress that's being made. And Warren, Scott, and John. And all came, John, I knew you were going to be here tonight, and I wanted to put your picture up here. Warren's here. And basically, this is a meeting that we had at our open house back on March 7th, and it was an opportunity for us to get feedback. But what we want to talk about tonight is implementation, talk about projects and programs, some of the things we can do. And we want to get you involved by giving us some feedback on these projects and programs, and maybe go back to your community and say, this is what I think are some issues. Are there any other items that we missed or any other projects that your community might be interested in? Scenario planning. We have two components in scenario planning. That was back. One involves looking at a regional build-out. If we kept on the continued population of what we projected to have over the next 40 years, our build-out population would be about 310,000. That's basically the current zoning could support about 310,000 people. And at present, we're about one-third of that development. Zoning changes, new technology comes in on board. This is a tool, a community planning tool called Community Biz that can do build-out analysis. We can do it for a region, we can do it for a community, that gives you an idea about how fast your community may be built out under current zoning and also current population projections. Another model we did, or another scenario, is Regional Economic Model Inc. It's called REMI. The New Hampshire Bureau of Economic and Labor Market Information has this model, and we did an analysis of advanced manufacturing. Lakes Region Community College and the Hewitt Center in Laconia are training people to go into advanced manufacturing. Advanced manufacturing today is very clean, high-tech, all computer operated, and I think they're turning out about 25 or 30 students this year. They hope to turn out more next year and the following years. By year 5, they expect to turn out about 70 students. This will add about 220 to our manufacturing employment base, and that will have a significant input on our economy. For every one manufacturing job, is about 2 or 2.5% multiplier in terms of new employment, spin-off employment. These two aspect, scenario planning. They're not chapters in the master plan, but they just help to inform and guide, provide information regarding planning policies. Also, we looked at entrepreneurship, about the growth of entrepreneurship. These two items are policies of the Belmont County Economic Development Group. We think they're very good policies, and we thought we should embrace them as part of our planning effort. Our deadline is we're working assiduously to complete our draft documents by June 20th. We're going to submit them to the National Regional Planning Commission. They are the grantee, HUD. We are Lakes Regional Planning Commission, and the other 8 planning commissions are sub-grantees to the National Regional Planning Commission. They're going to look it over. And then Lakes Regional Planning Commission will have after we get comments back from the National Regional, we'll start a 30-day public review process around October 1. We'll put a notice in the paper. We'll have the plans, probably in electronic form, with maybe a couple hard copies in all 28 towns and 2 cities. And we'll ask people to look at them, give us comments. We'll respond in writing. And then the commission will be asked at its November 24th meeting to adopt the regional plan. And then on December 31st, 2014, the HUD funding ends and the regional plan should be completed. How can this group, our LRPC commissioners, help us? Well, you can review draft planning documents that are going to be up on the website soon. You can identify local regional projects to include in our implementation process. You can keep your communities informed. You can keep your selectmen and your planning board. We want these plans to be useful for the towns and also for local planning boards and local planning departments. As I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to mention again, LRPC is advisory only. We don't have any regulatory authority. We like it that way. We don't want to change it. We've heard that some people are concerned about the federal government coming in and assuming local land use responsibilities and local jurisdiction, and we've included this. Historically, state law provides local governments with the authority to make local land use decisions. There is no interest in changing or modifying this approach. So residents believe equity is found in the local decision-making process in which to be involved in the community. So this plan is going to advocate that the local decision-making process, stay in place the way it is right now, local planning at the local planning board level. Hopefully augmented by information and technical assistance. That concludes my presentation, and does anybody have any answers for my questions? Or does anybody have any questions for my answers? Did I say that right?
I just wanted to make a comment from the numbers who said that they would be interested in looking at this survey. This survey came into us probably 4 months ago, and it comes in, and I just want to say this to you because it's a survey of 215 pages, and 30 pages are the critical part of it. They are the written part and the graphs. And the rest of each one of the reports, because there were 2 of them, are the tables. And that's of interest, and you can look that up on the computer if you want, but you really only have to print out 30 pages. It's extremely well done. It's very clear, I think, and what I think is good about it is that they go through after the 30 pages and tell you what the error is. It's a telephone survey. It's a telephone survey of over 200 people. And the smaller one is related to the bigger one, as was said earlier by Jerry, but so that in effect you don't have to print out just the state one. You can print out the state one that's combined with the smaller local survey, because they're compared together all the way through it. Now the reason that I wanted to say this to you is that I come from Freedom, and I'm on the planning board in Freedom, and at the meeting the other night it was just announced that we are going to be doing an update of our master plan. So I have sent the chairman of the planning board these surveys, because I said, all this work has been done, and it's recent, and I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could sort of make our survey have a few of the questions of this survey because you could compare them and say, well, compared to that, Freedom doesn't feel that way at all, you know. And the chairman of the planning board was very pleased, which I was pleased to add that she was, and not thinking I was interfering. But she said that it would be a very good thing to also gain some of questions for Freedom from this survey. So I do highly recommend, if you're interested in this aspect of planning, that you take a look at this, this survey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Herb?
Take it. On your page 10, the slide called scenario planning, I use that as a focus, but the point I want to make is, you point out that build-out population would be 310,000 people in the region. Belknap County has been pretty flat for population growth, and actually decreasing in some towns. I just heard yesterday that COAS is losing about 1% per year. And the baby boom is approaching, or many are in retirement now, and the others are going to be entering it pretty quickly. And followed by some much smaller generations. And so we might be facing a situation where we're not looking at planning growth, we're looking at holding our own. And I don't see that, even that thought coming out in your presentation.
Well, that's a very good point, because population projections call for very, very slow growth. Like in a 10-year period from 2010 to 2020, there's only supposed to be 4% growth in the whole region. And you're absolutely right. We've tried to emphasize economic development. By that, we mean providing opportunities for jobs and high-quality jobs and things of this nature. If you went to a planning board, say 5 years ago, they'd be interested in growth management. How can we limit the amount of growth? Now you go is, how can we have a little bit of growth? How can we get a subdivision going? Or how can we have commercial? So the scenario planning is just a tool to kind of give you information about how long it might take to build out your town under current zoning. It's not meant to be a plan, it's just an exercise,
If I might follow up with that, the thing that would come after what I just said would be the current elderly group, if you will. I'm one of those. If the current elderly group had the good fortune of living in some very good boom times and amassing at least some level of wealth and investment, and the current economy, worldwide, nationwide, statewide, doesn't look like the next generations are going to have that luxury. And that's another thing I think you have to, in all of your planning, you have to really focus on how, I don't want to be negative on this, but how can we almost tighten the belt instead of see how we can grow?
And the Lakes Regional Plan Advisory Committee had this discussion. Should we be, is growth something we should be encouraging, or should we rather encourage quality opportunities for economic prosperity? Well, you make some good points, no question about it. Population is kind of flat, and we're not growing that much.
I can maybe just say a couple words about that. Because I think there's an acknowledgement of what you're saying throughout the state. I know the Lrpc directors have talked a lot about this issue. Because, you know, the zoning, the RSA that we quote here was written over 50 years ago. And it was, you know, we have spent, you know, planners have really spent most of the last 50 years doing a lot of growth management. Work, you know, after the booms, after World War II, there's been impacts from growth. And the planning laws really were written for growth management. Going forward, where we've talked a lot about this idea that, you know, the adaptability, that we don't really know, just to your point about scenario planning. I mean, I think it's interesting information. Under your current zoning, you could have the triple density and triple the population that you currently have. But it's also known that that's unlikely to happen. This idea of adaptability and resilience is becoming more important, because we don't know, 30 years from now, we don't know what the population, we don't know what kind of problems communities are going to run into. And this idea of, developing your community to the very perfect, to reaching the end point, that somehow your community will reach, its goal, and then it will be all, golden after that. We know that things are always changing, there's always new challenges. We don't know really what those challenges are. We are awfully worried about this idea of whether you believe in climate change or not, and get into some of that. The fact is there are many more severe storms going on. The frequency are increasing. There's a lot of washouts of roads and other public damage that it's difficult to fix and to have the public budgets fixed. So there's a lot of discussion about how we can really turn planning and thinking more, focusing on the future still, but focusing on the future with the side towards adaptability and resilience, that we know that there's going to be change and the communities have to be ready for change, whatever it may be. So I'm not sure that we have all the answers, but I think there's an acknowledgement and there's a real shift in gears in what planning commissions are talking about. And there's probably a need at some point to revisit the legislation and update the legislation and get people, more focused on the future and what we can do about the future. But I think you have a very good point, and it's the point that we're talking a lot about.
John Cotton?
Just a comment on your slide on natural hazards and climate change. Irrespective of one's opinion on climate change, those are the natural hazards we're faced with. Now, always have been. So those hazards are real. The frequency may be open to discussion, but for instance, the last earthquake in New Hampshire was just 17 days ago on the 13th. Did anybody feel it? No. Within the Lakes region somewhere, very small. But this is, I only ran across it because I asked for the table of recent earthquakes, and if it popped, I was not surprised, but because we have them frequently. We're much luckier than Los Angeles.
Well, John, I know in your town of Andover, Route 4, that culvert got washed out twice, and then people had to travel 40 miles around to get south on Route 4, and then the state eventually came in with FEMA money and improved the culvert, made it a bigger culvert. I think they did a nice job, but that might be an example of trying to deal with natural hazard type conditions. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I do, and they fixed everything except the lowest top, which floods every other year now still, so we still go around a long way. Right at Dalphon's lumber.
Steve?
I know in our town, we just finished doing our survey, and one of the things that we've really noticed is the drop in student population in school. And in about just a little shy of 6 years, we've lost almost 500 students. Students relate to parents. Parents relate to grandparents that were here. Why did they come here? And again, they're seeking employment. And then on Sunday, I don't know anybody who caught Channel 9 that they discussed about aerospace that is real built up in New Hampshire, and our exports that were really compounded, almost 40% increase. And you say, okay, so are we educating our kids to stay? Are we offering them a place to stay other than in their parents? And you're hearing this more and more, and what are we doing in our capital to entice businesses to come and stay? And a lot of it was still afterwards. I know on Sunday we had a discussion about the taxation of some of these companies that come here. You know, sure, they're looking for tax breaks, and of course the movie industry was looking for a big one in Maryland lately. But are we really enticing a company to come here and stay? Is our labor force educated enough to work within what they bring? Or, as Coas had for such a long time, a paper mill. And there's some very intelligent people, engineers that had to work there, And yet they were belittled for such a long time. Oh, they're just up in there, a bunch of laborers and that kind of thing. But now we have these immigrants coming at us at a faster rate than we've ever had before into New Hampshire because they're moved from Massachusetts to Manchester. Manchester then floods them out. And that's where we're seeing our students in our town area have left. We're trying to trace, where do they go? Where do they go to school? Do they come back? Do they go on? And I know in my class of graduates, all went to the West Coast. There's about 7 or 8 in the past 2 or 3 weeks. We've all gotten in contact via the internet, and I was just amazed. They're still out in California because that was where the high tech and everything else headed for, other than around 128 in Massachusetts. So we're seeing our town going down. We have one industry. If it leaves, we turn off the lights. Literally. There's nothing else around us. We can't run to Franklin. We can't run to Plymouth or Laconia because there's not enough to sustain. And more than half of the people who are employed in Frauenburg do not live in Bristol now. So we're on the skids.
Bristol is a good example of a community upgrading its town downtown, with your beautification and streetscape program. I think everything came out well.
That took almost 100 years to happen.
And it took about a year to actually happen.
I drove through it last year during construction, but it's well worth it now.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to comment on both issues I'm hearing. Globally and nationally, I'm a boomer, and relative to youth leaving the town, isn't it actually more cost productive? So now maybe what our towns are going to be facing, you're still going to have the boomers coming in. I ain't going anywhere. And then, I don't have any grandkids yet, so now the question is, what is in fact going to come into Molten Borough? I believe there's going to be a heck of a lot more boomers coming in, from what the real estate folks tell us. They're leaving Florida. Where are they going? They like New Hampshire. They love Lakes region. Maybe we should prepare ourselves for that. If the youth are leaving our towns, they're probably seeking jobs. If there are no jobs here, can you blame them? So now the question is, what jobs are available? If you got a PhD from MIT, you're probably not going to come to Molten Borough, to work at Center Harbor Diner. You're going to probably want to go to Silicon Valley, maybe start your own business. So maybe the realities are, you've got two things happening. You've got demographics of population growth or stabilization, really. And then you've got a global effect happening. The jobs maybe are, if you don't get into, if we're in the Dakotas, then we'd probably be talking about oil. But we're here in the East Coast. We're the mecca for high tech. We don't have manufacturing yet because it's not feasible. You can't compete with China and Mexico. You couldn't. Maybe the day's coming, to Steve's point, there's some propaganda out there saying affectionately that maybe you will come back. And if you're a ViewTech or something up there in Meredith, or, hey, why not? And if you give them a tax break, or you make it conducive for business to come in, maybe they will.
No more questions?
Just one question on timeline. The draft is going to be completed on June 20th?
Around.
Yeah, okay, and then submitted to the national?
Right.
Okay. Is there any reason why the public review couldn't start at the same time that the draft goes to national? That would give people more like 4 months to comment and get in on, as opposed to 30 days.
The review process is ongoing. Hopefully these documents will be on our website and people will be encouraged to review it. But there has to be an official 30-day review period according to the statute.
According to the statute.
Yeah, right. But we can start it sooner, and we probably will. But officially, it has to be 30 days.
Just to get it out there, get people looking as early as you can, just to get feedback. I don't know how you do that. I think it'd be a good thing to do.
We're reluctant to, we like to give each community maybe a copy for the selectmen, a copy for the planning board, maybe a copy for the library, and then use electronic means to actually get it out to people via the web, or give people a disc, or whatever. Yes, ma'am.
When you were reviewing some of the stats from the survey or whatever, was there a lot of concern about the state of health care in this area? Especially as, like the gentleman behind me said, we're seeing a lot of baby boomers, and they're coming with a lot of healthcare needs. And we're a pretty rural area, by and large, and, a lot of the, Dartmouth Hitchcock is an hour and 20 minutes from my house. Concord is 50 minutes. Lakes Region is 45 minutes, depending on traffic. So, wondered if people that are coming in to stay, if they're concerned about, healthcare providers and healthcare services.
The surveys didn't get into that deeply, but I think when a retiree is choosing an area, I think being close to a hospital is right up there. So I think those communities that are close to hospitals in a nice area like Lake Region are right for retirees to invest. In some of our community of interest meetings, they came up, healthcare was mentioned, basically, I guess, the cost of insurance, health insurance. It wasn't a real high right on there, per se.
Yeah, I'm talking more about community-based healthcare.
I don't remember, I must admit, I wasn't looking out for that, but I can do that and see, because it would be interesting to see if they have some results from that. So if you want to give me your email. Sure.
Is this updated website?
It will be tomorrow, that presentation, right, the presentation?
Yeah, it'd be good if we're legible and the colors were
Right.
distinct.
Right, and we just got it done today.
No, I think we should be able to put some draft chapters on that too.
Hopefully, vision will be up there, economic development, transportation. They'll be up there soon, but hopefully in a couple of days.
Maybe when you send out that monthly news blast, you could say on that what's just been put on there.
That's a really good idea.
Mr. Chairman.
You've just run them out. Amen. All right. You want to just wait 15 minutes and see whether there's any other business? All right, is there any other business to become before the body there this evening?
Can I just fill you on the other business? It just occurred
Oh,
to
yes,
me
other
listening.
business, Gene, go ahead.
Yeah. It just occurred to me listening to what's been said tonight, that is something that we really haven't in our committee spent a whole lot of time talking about it from an implementation point of view, which is really where we are at the moment. Is this business of what are we implementing if we're not talking about the increase in population? If we're talking about, the communities are still going to exist and they're not going to die. So therefore something has to grow in order to keep alive. So that what are we talking about? And maybe it would be interesting if everyone here just spent 10 minutes thinking about that and wrote it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and we do actually have pieces of paper that we can pass out for that. We've tried to collect all your CIPs, capital improvement plans, and collect what projects we could glean from those documents. We do have a spreadsheet that we can, I think a blank spreadsheet we can pass out tonight, Jerry, that can be used for brainstorming of project ideas, but we really do want to have a robust implementation section, and we really do infrastructure, water, sewer projects, and other things that the community are thinking of. If they can, there's really a benefit to including those in the plan, that you can get our help in implementing it, but it also helps with outside funding to help make it a higher priority project if it's included in the regional plan. So there's some real good benefits to commissioners bringing forward project information so that we can include it in the regional plan, and include it under our, there's different goals and objectives, and it can be included in that sort of typology and really maybe rationalize what those, and fit in where those projects are, why those projects are important, not only to the community, but the region, and how they fit into the whole regional vision. So there's some real benefits to doing that. So I think I'd like to pass those out. And I'd also, I think really the core question here is that we're going to be asking you to vote on this plan, on this document. And I think we need to hear from you what you need to hear from us, or what information you need to be able to make that kind of decision. Because, we have a few months, we're running down here to the it's getting down to the end of the project, and we still have a few months, and we need to get information out to you, we need you to be able to review it, and we need you to be able to be comfortable enough with it to vote, hopefully to adopt it for the region, voting on behalf of your community. The commissioners vote according to the RSA for the regional plan. So that's really what this meeting was really intended to do, is to basically help to serve that up and say, we're just a few months from the point where we're going to ask you to vote for the document. So there's been an awful lot of planning process, there's been an awful lot of, there's lots of draft documents, there's lots of stuff for you to review. Yes?
One way of getting at these kinds of reports is to start with an outline and get a lot of comments on that outline. What is meant by different items in the outline, rather detailed thing. Are there any plans to go that way, Jerry?
Outlines were prepared, and we do have outlines on the Granite State Future website. If you go in and click Lakes Region, you can find these outlines.
Okay.
We did develop outlines for each chapter.
How detailed are they? Do they contain the subjects that will be addressed in those chapters?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 pages each.
Okay, good. They're at the Granite State website, did you say?
Let's pass on.
Granite State Future.
Yeah. That'll give us a better idea.
We had talked about breaking into a couple or 3 groups. We do have a spreadsheet, a blank spreadsheet, with a sort of a template for adding project information. It's not what is being passed around now, because there's another handout to do that. So I don't know if people are interested in breaking into those groups, or just staying as a whole.
Jerry, do you have any more of those, or is that?
Yeah, we have some more.
Thank you.
So you can see, we have fairly limited information right now that we got from the CIPs. In some cases, communities didn't have CIPs, in some cases, they didn't get any information from that
Thank you, Gina.
So this is a report we received from a student intern assisting us. There's a blank there on the number handle. We didn't find any information regarding the potential project.
I don't need to, look at mine, see what I got.
I mean, that's what it took 8 years to do it, it's just completed.
Now you got right, yeah.
It wouldn't have taken you 8 years to do it. You did it in 5 years.
Well, that long, because we had nothing for 50. A lot of argument, I'll tell you.
I'm not sure. So how do you folks feel about breaking into a couple groups to think about, brainstorm some of these projects using that big spreadsheet? Or is that something that you want to work on and send in? Or is this something we can break into groups for? It's really, does anyone have any feelings about that?
I'm sorry.
You're gonna take notes for all of us? And then you pass on your.
Everybody have a big one back here? You have one of these?
Work on it, send it in.
Joe?
Get home early. Work on it, send it in. Okay, why don't we plan on doing that? You know, any info, any project information, it doesn't have to be in that format. I mean, if you have the idea, if you have notes from a meeting, or you have a project list, you know, we'll take whatever format is easiest for you. So, but we really would like to get that information, and I think it's very much in your interest to put that information forward.
So projects that underway now are definite plans, or?
I think we're talking about potential projects that will be implemented in the future. So if it's being implemented now, if there's a phase that isn't sure that you're going to go forward, or you don't have funding for another phase or something like that, I think that's the kind of things that we're interested in. Also interested in regional projects. I mean, there's been, you know, I don't know how pie in the sky it is, but I've had some very interesting conversations about the Lrpc River Basin program around the region lately. You know, any sort of regional projects that make sense would also be great to point out and to bring to light. Yes.
Well, it just hit me that one of the things that is not addressed in any of the stuff that we've talked about tonight is education. And, you know, to my mind, that's a critical thing. We talked a little bit about how the technical school or the community college has really helped this area. It's developed people who stayed in this area. It's helped people go to UNH, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not only the high schools and the grade schools, but these kinds of schools that really feed people here and help create a workforce. Plymouth State has grown by leaps and bounds and been a resource. Southern New Hampshire University. That kind of momentum, I believe, needs to be maintained, and these things have to be nurtured, and they really provide a lot of pluses to this area in many ways. And I don't know, I haven't thought far enough to devise any projects that would help that. But I throw it on the table because it's something that hasn't been mentioned here today and I think should be addressed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think the Lakes Region Community College, the advanced manufacturing, the scenario that we showed up there was an example of where Lakes Region Community College has an advanced manufacturing program. There's some composites programs going on, some other community college, Great Bay Community College, bringing in, you know, helping to support some major job creation and high-tech job creation. There's 400 or 500 jobs paying $60,000 plus or something like that in Rochester, and they wouldn't, that company, Saffron, would not be located there without the community college with the composites program. And I think we're looking for similar effects with the advanced manufacturing program at Lakes Region Community College and supporting workforce. The community colleges are the incredible engine that we have for workforce training. There's a lot of workforce training.
I would encourage us to see if we could find some worthwhile programs and projects that help in that area.
In the advanced manufacturing area?
Well, in just the education.
The
education. I don't, you know, that's just one. There's a pretty good nursing component there. So there are a lot of things that they are doing here. Are there other things that really are necessary to get to our goals, which is to provide a workforce around here that can bring in industry, that can help us with our tax base, to allow us to do some of the other things that we want to do that are not revenue producing. But contribute to the quality of life, keep people here whom we want to stay here, etc.
I agree, and I think, I don't, do you think we do a good job of addressing that in the economic development chapter?
We tried it, we put some information, we probably could beef it up a bit.
But I think particularly, if you review the economic development chapter, see, if where you think we're missing the boat, and that's the kind of comments we need right now, is I think in the economic development chapter, when you're talking about education, you should spend more time on the Lakes Region Community College and the programs that they're providing, because that's the key to keeping employers in the area and bringing new employers. I mean, I think that's the kind of comment that we need from folks like you. I think you're right on that. I think we decided we're gonna work on these project sheets outside of this meeting. Really hope you do and provide that forward. And I think the other question that's really on the table still is how, again, we're asking you something. We're asking lots of stuff, but we're asking you in particular to vote on adopting a document. And we need to provide you information to put you in a place where you can make that decision. So I think we need to, we're going to be putting a lot of information on the website. There's also lots of information there already. There's outlines, there's 300-page surveys, there's more information than you can possibly read and absorb in a short amount of time, I can tell you that. But if there's particular interests that you have or things that you want to check, then I think we can tell you where that information should be located or is located in the process. So I think that's, and I think we talked about maybe having some area meetings. We have these 4 sub-regions in the Lakes region, and maybe we should have meetings like this in each of the sub-areas to get more detailed comments from commissioners. So we're thinking about this. We're thinking about the idea that we should be starting the public input sooner. Makes a lot of sense. I think we're going to do that. Jerry's contracted to be with us until the end of June. I think that's part of the reason why that time schedule wasn't more robust after June. Jerry had a contract with the organization, and that is going to be coming to an end in the end of June. But we are going to be moving forward after that, hopefully with a final draft plan, moving forward, trying to get discussion and make changes with it to the extent that we need to get it approved by the commission. So that's where we're headed with this. So, any questions? Yeah.
Just a quick question. On this sheet, the large sheet that was handed out, you've got 7 lines here. There's 2 transportation lines. Am I missing some point here, or is there a duplication? Or?
Well, I think we made a mistake. We were doing this today, and
I think we were just basically looking for the top 3 projects, just because after 3, I think 3 is a good number to focus on. Top 3 projects in those different chapter areas, which are chapters. That breakdown is basically, there'll be different chapters for each one of those areas. And we're hoping to have a real good implementation plan that is organized in that way, with each chapter, economics, transportation, environment, all has an implementation section, and we pull it all together in one implementation chapter. Obviously that's something that would be updated, but it should be very, I think it could be very interesting to see, how many, what's out there for needs and wishes and wants and priorities for the region.
Submit a substitution for that second transportation icon for your broadband mapping implementations here in the state. We're talking about boomers with demanding high-speed internet. We're talking about our youth who are, you can operate without high-speed internet. And in fact, that might be the mechanism that ties anything and everything we're going to talk about. I'm just a member of the committee, I'm not a commissioner. but from my purview, you have a mechanism right now, you're already working on the mapping essence. You've got UNH down the road. Dr. Yassini at UNH he's renowned across the country. He's the guy that invented the cable modem. He's getting all kinds of federal, state grant money to bring in more technology, more knowledge. If we utilize that mechanism to draw business, what have you, it might be the tool or the mechanism for transportation, for culture, for environment. We're all using computers. If you provide them with a trunk and a mechanism to let them communicate.
I mean, there's no doubt that broadband is as important.
The reason I bring up mobile, we do have that as one of our hot buttons.
And you know from working on the Northborough Committee that a lot of those improvements, make sense to happen at that local level. It makes sense for the towns to put up a couple $100,000 to move forward with some improvements. And I think, in a lot of cases, that's really what it's going to take, or in the foreseeable future, that's really what it's going to take to serve some of these underserved areas.
On UNH's website, the Center of Excellence, that those folks are doing right now, Dr. Yassini's got an 8.5 by 11 memo, 5-pager, down to the FCC. Seeking funding, I believe they commented even on Lakes Region Planning Commission, to give you a heads up. But, gee, if you get on that bandwagon, hello about it.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Have you done it on level?
Message received. I mean, at the state level, I think the state got a bunch of money from federal money, the ARA money, that stimulus money. That's coming to an end. That really has done a lot of, and we're still behind our surrounding states in terms of broadband infrastructure. The state, whether they keep their broadband, what's her title? We call her broadband czar. We've called her different things. Their broadband planner for the state is their funding is going to be running out at the end of this year, and the state isn't sure whether they're going to continue that role. So we need to make the point. We need to make it loud. We need to make it in different locations, and we need to think about what we can do as localities and as a region to move things forward too, because we're running up there's squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's limited resources out there, and all of that.
Somebody mentioned healthcare earlier, and that's it completely escapes us in the discussion of broadband. But increasingly, rural healthcare, especially for us older folks, is going to be more and more dependent on broadband, so that you can have, overuse the expression, an interface with your medical care through the internet. From body testing to all sorts of things.
And I think the opposite is true too. If you don't, more and more public services are being offered through the internet, and if you don't have a good internet connection, you're not going to have access to a lot of those services. It's a real issue. It's a real access issue. Roads now, a third of our roads are in poor condition. We had the Commissioner of DOT talking about that before the TAC committee or not. There's a lot of roads that deliverers will not serve anymore. UPS will say, we're not going up that road anymore. It's becoming a serious issue. There's a lot of competing demands, and I think that's why planning processes like this and trying to figure out priorities and trying to get down on paper what our needs are and what our priorities are is really important.
Well, just to build on what this gentleman said, is because we are so rural, it isn't just about how close is the nearest hospital anymore. Yeah. It isn't, that is not the draw anymore. It's being able to access your healthcare needs in a rural setting, and being able to care for patients in a rural setting, being able to use the internet as a conduit to get to your healthcare providers.
Right, yeah. How far do you have to go for
That's beautiful.
treatments or whatever? If you have to drive 2 or 3 hours, that's not so great.
IPCP's in Meredith. He said, I'll email you some stuff from the doctor's database, and make your choice of whether you want to take a PSA test or not, but they're going to be false. And then without even
commenting that maybe at the federal level, whether it's the Affordable Care Act or what have you, can in fact have an impact on what we're talking about. But with this lady's point of view, and I happen to subscribe to that, there will be industries that can actually be created. In Molten Roll, Meredith, you've got visiting nurses, or we've got private businesses, you know. And then existing industries can be more efficient, you know.
Exactly. We've only got 16 out of the 26 hospitals here in the state. The federal government's going to allow us through Anthem to go. Duh. But I can go to my computer anytime I want and talk to my doctor. As long as the town or what have you makes available the infrastructure to allow us to do it. So you folks can.
So, I'm not sure what else to say about you know, you're absolutely true. We're all agreeing. We're all saying that, you know, but there are these competing needs. There are these competing demands, and I think that's where plans and prioritization comes in. So I think that's where we're at. So I'm not sure what else we can do tonight. I think we've.
Sounds as if they have their homework assignments. And they do when?
Well, and again, I think the onus back on us. Again, we need to provide you the information that you need to review the plan and be able to be in a position to vote. So, as you think about your homework assignments or other things that you would be looking into, certainly keep in touch.
But if you could send these back to us within a week, that would be most appreciated.
That would be
April
great.
7th.
Because, and what we'll do is we'll compile it all together and get out a draft chapter, and you'll be able to see, you know, this spreadsheet that's by town. What's up?
Get the address.
To send it to? I think, yeah, we have the address on the web. Do we want, you can mail it, you can email it, we'll take it.
Do you have a format that we can fill out on the internet and just send in?
Yeah, we can put this form on the website tomorrow morning.
Yeah. You haven't seen my handwriting, but I can assure you.
No, that would be great. That would
Just
save
my keyboard.
That's smart. That makes a lot of sense for us to. That would actually save a lot of time if we could do that. So.
But if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, that's fine too.
Yeah, whatever works.
I think we should be thinking about what does the Lake region need versus what the customer needs. Or what don't we know that we really need as a multi-community, and rather than, tougher those capital needs or tougher those problems, that's what's on this list. Our biggest problems are, that should come out of this plan, are some education and where do we fit in with our surrounding towns? Working together about some problems, or what do we need to push the state button on? Talk to our representatives about, rather than, I saw on the list, I saw a lot of things that are just plain, that's our town stuff.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I wanted to make sure that we had some hard, tangible projects, some infrastructure projects and other things in our implementation session. But I think planning projects and things like that are also important, and we'd love for you to think about that and include that also on the list. But we didn't want to forget about the infrastructure projects and the tangible stuff either. But I think your point is very well taken. I think a lot of times we would just focus on the planning activity. But we want to make it relevant for the towns, and we want to make it relevant to the region. So I think both are good. But, obviously, to the extent that we can have regional plan projects and programs and things like that, that's why we're here, is to be able to help with that sort of thing. So are there any other questions or concerns? I'll turn it over to the Grand Poobah.
Perform my duty then and say, meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I saw that.